Shalom. Adonai Echaim. Adonai Echaim. Oh, no. English? Be not afraid. Adonai Echaim, it means, may the Lord be with you. Yes, I am Joseph, son of Jacob. I believe you know my son, yes? He's been good boy, I trust. Yes? Yes, and my wife, Miriam. No, English. Mary, yes? You know Mary? Yeah? Many have asked why there is so little that is written about me in your book. I tell them the answer, she is simple. Your book is not about me. It's about my son, yes? Many have asked why not one word I ever spoke is recorded in your book. Some have said, well, maybe Joseph is mute. You can hear they were wrong, yes? But one woman said, no. If he is mute, it makes sense because they call him the perfect husband. We have the married peoples here, yes? I tell you, I am perfect at nothing. I do strive for perfect devotion to God because my father Jacob raised me to devote my life in all ways to God, yes? I've been called a great many things throughout the history. Did you know this? They call me the protector of the Christ child, the defender of the faith. Did you know that some peoples, they even call me saint? Did you know that? I was not surprised to learn they did not call you saint until long after anyone who could have ever known you on earth was long dead. Of all that I have been called for 2,000 years, I have one favorite. Would you like to know what it is? Yes? Yeah. Papa. Papa. Would it surprise you to learn he calls me Papa to this very day? And I want you to know, he said Papa long before he ever said Mama. No, very smart boy he was, yes? Well, I was born in Bethlehem. Did you know that? The same as my son. But when I was young, my father moved our entire family, save two older brothers who had families. They stayed in Bethlehem. They moved us to Nazareth in Galilee. And it's in Nazareth where I was raised. But more important, it's in Nazareth where I met Mary. Yes? We were children together. We would laugh, play, come together for the festivals. I'm going to tell you something about Mary. Is that all right? Yeah. Mary had a smile. Whenever she would walk into a room, the room, it seemed to just light up. Do you know people like this? This is my Mary, yes? Would you like me to tell you something else? You have to promise me if I tell you this, you can never tell her I told you, yes? Yes? All right. No, you have to promise me, yes? Okay. Mary loved to laugh. She loved to laugh. Now, she loved to laugh, so I think that's why my son Jesus, why he loved to laugh. He learned from his mother, yes? The problem was when Mary began to laugh, it was uncontrollable. She could not stop laughing. She'd laugh, and she could not stop laughing. Do you know people like this? Now, when we were married, and she was angry at me, I know you say to yourself, no one could be angry at you, Joseph. I know, but when she was angry at me, because I knew how to make her laugh, I would make her laugh. And then she'd laugh and laugh. She'd forget why she was angry at me. But then I got in trouble for making her to laugh, so I lost both ways, yes? I believe that it was at a funeral. It was the funeral for my mother that I first realized Mary was to be very important to me. I remember I was standing there at my father's house. I was 14 years of age. In my culture, you are a man at 13, yes? So I'm a man, I'm 14, and men have to not cry. You have to be strong. And so I was standing there greeting the peoples. They come to pay the respect for my mother, and I'm greeting, thank you for coming, and Mary is off to the side, and she's just looking at me. And at one point, she came over to me, and she said, Joseph, why do you stand there like the statue? This day is for your mother, Joseph. I know you love your mother. You must cry for your mother, Joseph. She took my hand into hers. She looked me into the eyes. She said, cry for your mother, Joseph. Do you know that just as she took my hand into hers, I began to cry? I learned that Mary was wise well beyond her years, yes? It was not long later, her father, my father, decided we should become betrothed. Now, in my day, betrothal is different, I think. What do you call that today before you are married? What? Yeah, these are old ears. Yes, thank you. Yes, engagement, exactly. Yeah, I think it's different. When you are betrothed in my day, you are married. It is a contract of marriage. You are married in every way save two. One, you do not know each other intimately. Number two, you do not live under the same roof. But other than that, you are married. And there are only two ways to break a contract of marriage when you are betrothed. One, if you feel that the woman has been disloyal to you, you can bring her before a judge. You present your evidence to the judge, and many times the only evidence is the word of the husband. Fair, yes? And we do have married peoples here. And if the judge says she is guilty, he can sentence her to death, and she's taken out and stoned to death. That's different than engagement, yes? The second way to break the contract of marriage when you are betrothed is if you, under Mosaic law, if you go before two witnesses and you say that this is what we want, we both agree, the two witnesses can grant you a writ of divorcement, and then you go your separate ways. That's different too than engagement, yes? Well, Mary and I, we were betrothed, and it lasts for 1 year. You are betrothed for 1 year's time. At the end of 1 year, all of the men gathered together at the man's house. They parade to the streets, to the woman's house, take her from her house back to their house, and then there is a celebration. It lasts for 1 week. And at the end of that week celebration, you are married, yes? Again, different than what you call engagement, yes? Well, Mary and I are betrothed, and she came to me one day. She said, Joseph, I need to speak with you. And it's very important to me, Joseph. I said, yes, Mary, of course. Let us go to our place. Mary and I had a place. Do people who are in love today, do you have a place? You say, this is our place, we go to our place? No? No more? There is no more? You don't have a special place for two people when you're in love? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear this. What has the world come to now? But Mary and I, we had our place, and it was up on the rocks on the hill there in Nazareth, and we used to go there. Now, when you are betrothed, you are not allowed to be alone. You had to have a chaperone, yes? But Mary and I, we knew how to get away. So we would go to our place on the side of the hill, and I said to Mary, let us meet there. We will talk about whatever is bothering you. And we met there. And I remember I was sitting to the side, and Mary was standing and then sitting and then moving here, moving there. And finally I said, Mary, what is wrong? I have never in my life seen you like this. And she said, I don't know how to tell you this, Joseph. I said, Mary, there is not one thing you could tell me that would change my love for you. I love you more than my own life. Just tell me what it is that is bothering you. And she looked at me and she said, Joseph, I am with child. Well, I knew one thing, that Mary was not with child on her own accord. She would not have done that to herself, to her parents, or to me for that matter. She would not have done it. That was not Mary. And the other thing, I knew that Mary somehow, even though I did not understand, was telling me the truth, because Mary cannot lie, yes? And so I say to her, Mary, I don't understand. This does not make sense to me. I do not understand, Mary. She said, all I can tell you, Joseph, is I had a vision. And in my vision, I was called to be with the Holy Spirit, and they said to me that I am carrying a child of the heavens, and that I am to raise that child as my own. And I said to her, well, Mary, I believe you, but I do not understand. Yes? So I did what my father taught me to do. I said, I need to go home, Mary. I need to pray. You see, I was raised by my father to pray. When you're in good times, you're in bad times, you pray to God, you ask for direction, yes? So I went home, and for 1 week's time, I prayed every day. I said, God, show me the way. Show me what you want me to do. Help me to understand. Please let me know so I know. Please. And so at the end of 1 week, I decided what I was going to do. I decided I was going to go and see Mary the next day and say, let us go before 2 witnesses and ask for a writ of divorcement. Now, let me tell you, I did not decide to go for a writ of divorcement because I did not believe her. I did it because I did believe her. And I knew that if God had so ordained, I had no place in this. I am not worthy. And then, did you ever in your life make a decision and you knew deep down it was the wrong decision? Did you ever do this? You make a decision, you think this is right, but deep down in your stomach it does this back and forth. That's how I felt. I felt something was wrong with this. And I went to bed that night and I was very uncomfortable. And I remember when I fell asleep, I had a vision. I had a vision. Of my own, I had a vision. And the heavenly being appeared to me and said, be not afraid, Joseph, son of David, for Mary has told you rightly. She is carrying a child of the Holy Spirit. And we want you to raise that child, Joseph, as your own. And we want you to name him Jesus. After the vision finished, I woke up. I got out of the bed. I decided I need to go to Mary right now. I have to go to Mary. I have to beg her forgiveness for even to think of divorcing her. But I looked outside. It was dark. It was the middle of the night. I could not go. So I got dressed, and I did what I always do when I am nervous. I paced. Now, my room is from here to here. And I remember I'm doing this all night long. I'm thinking, I want to go to Mary. How am I going to say this to Mary? I need to go. And I keep looking out for the sun. And I'm back and forth. And finally, when it was day, I ran to Mary's house. Now, Mary lived 362 paces from me. No, we children's, we counted. We knew how many steps it was to all of our friends' house. Here's a game. Do children count today? So you don't have a place where you go when you're in love and you don't count in your world today. No, I don't understand. Well, the other reason we had to know how many paces, on the Sabbath we could not move and walk more than 100 paces. So we had to know how many paces to each other's house. So Mary was 362 paces. This day, I was so excited, I made it to her house in less than 100. And when I arrived at the door, her father, Joachim, was there. And I said, Joachim, please, I beg of you. I said, I need to speak with Mary. I need to speak with her privately, please. And you know, he said yes. I thought to myself, why did we sneak off all those times? I should have just asked him, yes? Well, Mary and I, we went up to our place. And we're on the rocks, and I say to her, Mary, I need to beg your forgiveness. I planned to come here today, Mary, to say, let us go before 2 witnesses and get a writ of divorcement. It was not because I did not love you. I love you more than my own life. It was not because I did not believe you, Mary. I believe you. I just have no place in it. But Mary, I had a vision. I had a vision, Mary, not dissimilar to yours. And in my vision, the heavenly being says, I am to raise this child with you, Mary. We are to name him Jesus. And Mary looked at me and she smiled. And she said, Joseph, you have nothing to apologize for. There is no one I want to raise this child with more than you. Let me tell you, the heavens blessed me with the most wonderful woman they ever created. And then she looks at me, she says, I think perhaps we should get married now rather than wait the full year. And I said, yes, Mary, that's very smart. Yes. Why don't you go and tell your father? Ask for the permission. And she looked at me and she said, now, Joseph, something else I will tell you about Mary. Whenever she started by saying, now, Joseph, I was in trouble. She said, now, Joseph, you are the man. You will go to my father. You will ask for the permission. I said, yes, Mary, of course, yes, I will. So I went to her father, Joachim, and I said, Joachim, I beg of you, please. Mary and I have discussed. We decided we want to be married now, not wait for the full 1 year. Do you know he said yes? He did not even ask a question. He must have had vision of his own, yes? And so then the day came, all the men came to my house. We paraded down, took Mary from her house back to my house. We celebrated for 1 week's time, and then we were married. Praise be to God, yes? Not long after we were married, I received a notice that I was to go to where I was born, to Bethlehem, to register for census. And I thought about this, and I thought, Bethlehem, from where we lived in Nazareth, is 100 of your miles. That is a large distance, yes? And the weather was bad, the roads were bad, and I decided, and Mary, of course, is very, I never understood the word very. No, you are either pregnant or you are not, am I right? But Mary was a lot pregnant. And so I decide we're not going to go. So I go to Mary, and I said to her, Mary, I said, we received a notice. We were to go to where I was born, Bethlehem, to register there for the census. But don't worry, Mary. Don't worry. I am the man. I make the decision. We are not going to go. Well, Mary looks at me, and she says, now, Joseph. Oh, you know Mary. She says, now, Joseph, we are Jews, are we not? And I said, well, yes, Mary, of course we are Jews. She says, we are good Jews, are we not? I said, Mary, no. We strive to be the good Jews. She said, yes. We strive to be the good Jews. As people who are striving to be the good Jews, she says, we follow Mosaic law. And I said, yes, of course. She says, does it not say in Mosaic law that we're to follow the law of the land? And I said, yes, Mary. If the law of the land says we go to Bethlehem to register for census, then we go to Bethlehem to register for census. I never liked it when she argued the law against me. But I say to her, fine, Mary, but it's difficult. You cannot travel, and how do we do this? And she said, go to your father, ask to borrow a donkey. And that's what I did. I went to my father, and I said to him, may I please borrow one of your donkeys? He said, yeah. See, we were modest. We had next to nothing. We were very poor our entire life. And I did not even have a donkey. But my father, he let me borrow a donkey. I brought it back to our house, and I began did you know I'm a builder? Yes? So I began to build a seat onto the donkey for Mary to sit and for our things, and we began the journey to Bethlehem. Now, this took much longer than I had expected. The weather was worse, the roads were bad, and Mary had to keep stopping. She had to keep getting off the donkey and resting. And I'd say, Mary, we have to get to Bethlehem. We have to go register for we have to get to Bethlehem. She'd say to me, I don't know how many times she reminded me she was pregnant. And I said, yes, Mary, you just rest. You rest. When we arrived in Bethlehem, again, it was much later than I had expected. I had planned to stay at the home of one of my brothers. But by the time we arrived, other family members were there. There was no room for us at my brother's house. So my brother told me of an inn, and he told me how to get to the inn on the other side of Bethlehem. So I said, fine. And I said, Mary, we go to this inn. And so we are now leaving my brother's house. But Mary is tired of sitting up on the donkey. So she keeps getting down off the donkey. I say to her, Mary, you need to stay up onto the donkey. You see, Bethlehem normally has 100-200 people. Yeah? Because of the census, there were 2,000-3,000 people in Bethlehem. So I say to her, Mary, the peoples, they will knock you, they'll jostle you, they'll push you to the ground. You need to get up and stay onto the donkey. I remember this for one important reason. I believe it is the first and only time that Mary did exactly what I told her to do and did not argue. Well, we made our way through Bethlehem to the inn. And when we arrived at the inn, I said, Mary, please just stay under the donkey. I'll go in, I'll talk to the innkeep. And I said, please just stay. So I went in, and there was this innkeep, and I said to him, we need a room for this night. And he said, I'm sorry, I have nothing. And I said, we have traveled a great distance all the way from Nazareth in Galilee. We need a room. He said, I have nothing. I said, my brother lives here. And he said, I am sorry, because of the census, we have no rooms. And I thought to myself, what am I going to tell Mary? I told her that this night we would sleep without the stars. We would sleep inside and be away from the elements. And what am I going to tell Mary? And as I turned to leave, he must have had a vision of his own. Yeah? The innkeep said to me, wait a minute. He says, I do have a cave behind the inn. If you would like, you're welcome to go and stay there in the cave. And I said, well, yes. We have friends back in Nazareth who live in caves. Yes, that is very wonderful. Thank you. Now, I know that this innkeep has been spoken of poorly for many years. Am I right? Stop it. No, it was not his fault. It's not his fault I was late. It's not his fault it took so long. It's not his fault there was a census. And he did not have to offer us anything, and yet he offered us a place to stay, yes? So do you know that very night, Mary and I, before we went to sleep, we asked for God's blessings on that innkeep. Praise be to God for that innkeep. So the next morning, I remember I woke up, and Mary was already up. And do you know what Mary was doing? Any of you? She was cleaning. Cleaning. This is a cave where you keep the animals. And she is cleaning. She's moving this animal over to here, moving this animal over to there. She goes and gets the trough where the animals eat, moves the trough to here, and takes out all the old hay, gets new hay, puts the new hay into the trough, then goes and gets my tunic, my best tunic. I only have two. She gets my best tunic and puts it into the trough where the animals eat. And she lays the tunic there. And at that point, I say to her, Mary, what are you doing? That is my best tunic. And she said to me, she said, Joseph, if you're not going to help and you can't keep your mouth closed, then please just leave. I was happy to go. No, I had not seen Mary like this before. So I went outside, and I am there, and then all of a sudden she calls to me. She said, Joseph, come back in. I came back and I said, yes, Mary. She said, Joseph, it's time. I said, oh, time for what? Now, what do I know? I'm 19 years of age. In my day, men have nothing to do with the birth of children. Do they today? Yes? Why? Why? So I say to her, time for what, Mary? And she says, I feel I'm ready to give birth. I said, oh, good. Well, what do I know? She said, Joseph, I need help. You may not know this. In my day, the number one cause of death for young Jewish girls is giving birth. If we were back home in Nazareth, she had the girlfriends that would have been there to help. The mother would have helped. But here, there was no one. My brother's on the other side of Bethlehem. So I said, what am I going to do, Mary? She says, the innkeep gave us this place to stay. Go ask him. He may know of someone. So I went and I spoke to the innkeep, and he told me he knew of a woman who helps to give birth. So I went, I got the woman, and I brought her back to Mary. And I said, Mary, the innkeep says this young woman has had a lot of experience to bring the babies into the world. And Mary said to me, thank you, now leave. Twice in one day I was told to leave. But again, I was happy to go. I remember I went outside. Now, I thought this was going to be fast. Do you know it took hours? Yes. And what did I tell you I do when I am nervous? Pace. So I'm now outside of the cave and I'm walking back and forth facing. And the other thing I do when I am nervous, if I see a piece of wood or a rock, I pick it up and I begin to carve on it. I never know what it's going to be when I start to carve. I just keep carving. And at one point, as I'm out there carving, I had carved this. How do you say? A whistle, yes? And I decide this is going to be the first gift that I make for my son. And as I am standing there admiring my good work, I hear the most beautiful scream I've ever heard in my life. It was my son screaming. And Mary calls to me, she says, "Joseph, come in quickly." And I ran in, and I was there just in time to watch as the young girl, she was cutting the cord. And then she took my son and she put it onto a linen, and then took salt and put it all over his body. That's what we do to protect the skin in my day. Takes the salt, put it in the body, and then she wraps him in the linen. But she wrapped him too tightly. And I said to her, I said, "I think that you have wrapped him much too tightly." And this young girl looked at me and she said, "Oh, have you wrapped newborn babies?" And I said, "Well, no." And she says, "So don't tell me what I'm doing. I know what I am doing." I said, yes. This was not my best day with women. So when she had finished, she took him and she was handing him to me. Well, what did I know about holding a newborn baby? So I said, no, please, to Mary. And I watched as this young girl handed my son to Mary. Let me tell you, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, to stand there and watch as Mary is holding our newborn son. I can say nothing. I am totally without speech. I am there, and it's just so beautiful to watch. And then finally Mary said to me, "Joseph, don't you think you should thank this young girl so she can go home?" I said, yes, of course, Mary. I said, "Thank you so much. We could not have done this without you." And she left. And then I sat there next to Mary. And we were sitting there and we were talking. Now, have you ever been with someone talking to them and they're tired and their eyes start to close, then they open, and then their head starts to go down and they pull? Have you noticed this? Well, this is what Mary is doing. I say to her, "Mary, you are very tired. We traveled a great distance. You just gave birth. You should lie down. You should go to sleep." And you know, she lay right down and she went right to sleep. And I remember I'm watching her, and then I get nervous again. I'm thinking to myself, she's holding our son and she's asleep. What if she rolls over on top of him? She could suffocate him, yes? So I thought, what am I going to do? I have to protect my son. I said, "I'll go get that girl. I'll go get that. She'll know what to do." And I started to leave the house or the cave, and I decide, I'm the father of this boy. I will protect him. So I went back. I leaned over and I picked him up from Mary, and I held him in my arms. He didn't cry. He didn't cry. Yes. No. Hello. Welcome to the world. Yeah, what do you say to a newborn baby? The first thing I did is I undid the linen. It was too tight. I could see his face was turning. No, it was turning blue. I could see this. And so I undid the linen, and his little hand, it came up. It was the most beautiful hand I've ever. Did you know that a newborn baby has nails? I did not know this. He had the best looking nails I had ever seen. And I remember I looked down, I took that hand, and I kissed his hand. I then leaned over and I kissed him on the head. I did not even think I was kissing the face of God. This was the most beautiful moment I think I ever had in my life. And finally I said, "Yes, we're happy you're here. We've been waiting for you." "Well, I've been waiting outside. Your mother kept sending me there." No, you'll learn about that one. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, well, while I was outside, I made something for you. I made this. He smiled. Did you see that? He smiled. You smile. You like that? Can a newborn baby smile? Yes? He smiled. You like that? Maybe one day you will learn to play this. You play a song for your mother and me, yes? This was the most beautiful night of my entire life. Well, I could tell he was tired. At least now he could breathe. And I took him over and I laid him down in that trough. Now it did not matter. It was my best tunic. And I laid him down into the trough. And I watched them, and then I watched Mary, and I laid down, and I fell right there to sleep. But did you know that the next morning, only a few hours later, there were people at the entrance of the cave? And they woke us up, and I went to them, and I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We are shepherds. We have been out tending the flocks all night, and we had visions of the heavenly beings that said the Messiah was born this night, and we are to follow the star." It brought us right to here. Do you know they ignored me, pushed right past me, went to where Jesus, dropped down to their knees, and began to pray before Jesus? Now put yourself in my place. People you don't even know are telling you that they were sent by heavenly beings to come to see your son. Yes? Well, on the 8th day, which under our custom is the day of circumcision and naming, I performed the ceremony. I circumcised my son. And then I did as I was instructed in the vision. I named him Jesus. On the 40th day, which is the day of presentation at the temple, I took Jesus, I took Mary to the temple. And do you know, just as we were walking up the steps to the temple and Mary is holding Jesus, a man, an older man, comes up to us. And he doesn't look at Mary, doesn't look at me, he just looks at the baby. And he says, "The prophecy has been fulfilled." He shouted again, "The prophecy has been fulfilled." He said many years before, he was told that he would not die until with his own eyes he saw the Messiah. He said, "I am looking into your baby's face. The prophecy has been fulfilled." And do you know later that same day, a woman, her name Anna, came up and did the same thing? Yes, this was very different for us, yes? Well, we went back to our home in Nazareth, but every year we went for Passover. We went in Jesus' first year and in his second year. When we went to Jerusalem for the second year, we decided we were going to go to visit my brothers in Bethlehem. And this one day I remember we are there. Jesus is on the floor. He's playing. I'm off to the side watching Jesus. Mary is in the back. And we noticed that there was a group of animals, a caravan of animals, out in front of the house. And these men, they were wealthy by how they were dressed. They came to the door of the house, and they saw Jesus there on the floor. And they just came in. No one asks us anymore. They just walk right in and lay down on their stomachs right there at where Jesus, right in front of Jesus. And Mary is hearing this. And she comes out from the back room and she says, "Joseph, what is this?" I said, "I don't know, Mary. They just came in." And she said, "Don't you think you should ask them?" I said, "Yes, Mary, of course." And so I say, "Excuse me, who are you?" And they said that they had been traveling for 1,200 miles, following a star, just to come here to see our son. And then they called to their servants, and they brought in gifts. One brought in gold, another one frankincense, another one myrrh. And they put them right in front of Jesus. Mary says to me, "Joseph, tell them we cannot accept those gifts." And I said to her, I said, "Mary, they're not for us, they're for Jesus." She said, "Now, Joseph," I said, "Okay, yes. "I am sorry, those gifts are much too valuable for us. We cannot accept them." And they said, "You have to. We have brought them for the 1,200 miles just to give to your son." And then they told us this. They said, "We want you to know something. We met with your King Herod. He told us he wants your son dead. So you must do what you can to protect him." That night, as Mary and I went to bed, I began to pray and I asked God, I said, is that true what they said? Is there any truth that King Herod wants our son dead? And did you know I had another vision? And the vision said to me, just this very night, Joseph, you take your wife, you take your child, you leave Bethlehem and you go to Egypt. Now, I told you I was raised by my father to pray, yes? But he also told me that when God speaks to you, you are to say yes. So I went, I woke Mary, and I tell her of the vision, and she says, we have no choice, let us go. So that very night, we left, we went to Egypt. Now, we were in Egypt for nearly 3 years. It was the worst 3 years of my life. The roads were bad, the weather was bad, there were factions that were fighting with each other. And how did I earn a living to feed my family, to protect my family, to provide a place to stay for my family? Did you ever ask yourself? Did you ever ask, how did Joseph support his family on that journey to Egypt for 3 years? Would you like to know? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. They are very valuable, yes? Do not ever tell me that God does not provide. Even when you don't know God is providing, yes? Well, the whole time we were on that journey in Egypt, I kept complaining. And I was just not happy to be there. And Mary was getting tired of my complaining. And she said to me, Joseph, did you not tell me that you were named for Joseph the patriarch? I said, yes, that's what I was told. So my father told me. And she says, do I not remember from the scriptures that Joseph the patriarch also went to Egypt? And I said, yes, Mary, you know your scriptures. Yes, that's exactly right. Do I remember, she says, from the scriptures that Joseph the patriarch, he went to Egypt as a slave? And I said, yes, Mary, that is exactly right. She said, you were a free man. You stop your complaining. No, I never liked it when she argued the scriptures against me. So I said, okay, well, finally I had another vision. Did you know this? And the vision told me that Herod, the one who wanted my son dead, had died, and it was safe to go home. And that's what we did. We went back home, and we settled into our house there in Nazareth. Now, I want you to know our house was a small house, and it was made of white mud brick, and it had a thatched roof. And it had only 3 rooms. And I tell you this for a reason. I had a habit. Do men have habits today? Oh, the women start to laugh. Yeah, well, I don't know their habits, but my habit was I collected things. You know, I told you I'm a builder, yes? So I know that some people, they think I'm a carpenter. How many of you think I'm a carpenter? Yeah. You may not know this. I'm going to tell you something maybe you don't know. In Nazareth, where I lived, there was very little wood. Very little wood. In fact, I remember a family came, asked me to make a boat for them, build a boat for them. I had to use 3 different kinds of wood because there was no wood. I had to do it. So I would find pieces of wood, I would find rocks, I would bring them back home, and I would put them into a room and keep them there because it was good for business, yes? If someone asked me to build something, to fix something, I don't have to go find or buy wood. I have it. Does that make sense to you? It did not make sense to Mary. No. She'd say to me, Joseph, you have this room. It is filled up. You must clean this room, Joseph. You must clean the room. I said, yes, Mary, I need it for my business. I don't want to hear about it. I need you to clean this room, Joseph. Well, I told her I would clean the room. I don't think I ever did. I intended to, but I don't think I ever did. I earned a living by walking each day 3.5 miles to a town called Sepphoris, which was the capital city of all of Galilee. And it was being rebuilt by King Herod, the son of the one that wanted my son dead. And he was trying to rebuild it like a Roman city, and they were hiring builders like me. And so 3.5 miles every day, I walked to Sepphoris. I worked all day. I walked back. When Jesus was old enough, we took him up to our place. Remember the place you don't have in your world today, where people who are in love go? I took him to the place that Mary and I had, And he used to go up there and watch for me when he knew it was time for me to come home. And he'd sit up there on the side of the mountain and just keep looking. And then he'd see me way down on the road, and he'd start to shout, "Papa, Papa, Papa." And I'd say, "Don't, you're going to fall. Don't, you're going to..." And then when he was even older, and he thought he was so much smarter than me, he used to go down among the rocks, and he'd hide behind the rocks. And when I got very close, he'd jump up and say, "Papa, Papa, I scare you, Papa. Yes, you give me the heart attack. Why do you do this to me?" I knew he was there, yes? But that's what papas do, yes? Well, when he was even older, I decided I'm going to take him and teach him my trade. I took him 3.5 miles each day with me to Sepphoris. It was the best time I ever had with my son. Every day, 3.5 miles, and I taught him to be a builder. Did you know Jesus was a builder? Oh, yes, no, he was a good builder. In fact, a woman came and brought a table to us to fix. And I said, "Yes, this I can have for you in 2 weeks' time." And she said, "Do you think you could have your son do it?" And it's not funny because he was stealing business from his father. And so he was a very good builder. On that journey to Sepphoris, I spent time also teaching him the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I taught him to memorize these books. Just as I was taught to memorize, my father was taught, and Jesus began to memorize those 5 books, the Torah, yes? And then I also taught him his prayers. Would you like to hear the first prayer I ever taught to Jesus? Yes? Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Repeat. Shema, Israel, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. Praise, you did the Chad. Very good, you did that. You have now prayed the first prayer I was taught, the first prayer my father was taught, the first prayer I taught to Jesus. I suspect it is the very first prayer that young Jewish children even speak and learn today. It means, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone." Praise be to God, you prayed that prayer. On that journey, Jesus would ask questions. He would see things, like he saw sheep, and a shepherd comes and he calls to the sheep, and only some of the sheep left the flock to follow the shepherd. And he says to me, he said, "Papa," he said, "why do only some of the sheep follow the shepherd?" And I said to him, I said, "Jesus, because those sheep know their shepherd. They know the shepherd, and they follow their shepherd. The shepherd has always been there for them, to protect them, to feed them. That's why I tell you to pray, Jesus. To pray every day. You pray to God so that you know God's voice, God knows your voice." Yes? And when I arrived back home one day, I remember I used to have another habit. When we had no money, so if I wanted to think about something I was going to build, I would always go down onto the ground, and in the dirt I would draw what I was going to build. And Jesus used to like to do that, so he was always writing in the dirt. And Mary saw that and said, "Joseph, why are you teaching our son to write in the dirt all the time?" And I said, "Mary, she said, "Now, Joseph." I said, "Okay, Mary." When Jesus was 12 years of age, I told you you were a man at 13, yes? Well, when he was 12 years of age, we were planning our journey for Passover to Jerusalem. Mary and I discussed it, and we said, he's 12, almost 13, nearly a man, yes? Let us tell him what we know of who he is. This was very, very difficult for me. I had to tell him I was not his father. We made the journey, and on the way we did what we had planned. We told him everything we knew. We told him of all the visions I had, the visions that Mary had, of all the people who appeared. We told him everything we knew. And then at the end of that journey, we were leaving, going back home. I remember I went to Mary one day and I said, I'd like to speak with Jesus. And she said, I don't know where he is. I thought he was with you. You may not know this. In my day, men and women travel in separate caravans. You come together for meals. But I thought that Jesus was with her, and she thought he was with me. So we could not find him. We were frantic. We started to ask all of our friends. Nobody had seen Jesus in Jerusalem. So I say to Mary, let us go and retrace our steps and try to find our son. We will meet on the steps of the great temple. And I'm saying to myself the whole time, this is why I am not worthy. I told you I was not worthy. What kind of a father loses his son? And I am so angry at myself. And when we arrived at Jerusalem on the steps, neither of us had found Jesus. So I said, let us go into the temple and ask God for direction. And so Mary and I, we went into the temple. Do you know what we saw? It was Jesus. He was there in the temple. He was sitting up and he was talking to the priests, the scribes. He was talking to them. They were asking him questions. He was answering them. He was asking them questions. They were answering. We were astounded by this. We ran to him. We put our arms around him. And then Mary let him have it. She said, what did you think you were doing? What on earth do you think you were doing? We were scared half to death. Your father was frightened. I was frightened. Why would you do this? Jesus looked up at us and he said this. He said, where else would you expect to find me? But in my Father's house. Don't you see? We just told him who he was. We just told him who he was. We should have known it would have taken him time to understand who he was. Well, we put our arms around him and we took him home. And as your book says, he grew in age, he grew in faith, he grew in wisdom, and he grew well by the standards of men. A short time later, I was given a fever. In my day, we have two kinds of fevers, small fever and great fever. I was given a great fever, and I knew that I was going to die. And I remember I became angry at God. I started to talk to God. I said, why are you taking me now? Why are you taking me now? Why are you taking me before I see what glory you have in store for our son? Why are you taking me now? After I died, God let me see what they did to my son. He let me see as they beat him and they scourged him. They ripped his skin off his body. As they threw him down, they put nails into his hands. And all I could think of, those were the hands I kissed. I kissed those hands the day he was born, and now they're putting nails into them. And I remember thinking to myself, God knew it was the time to take me. If I were still on the earth, I would have done everything to prevent it. I could not have stood there and just let them do this to my son. That's my little boy. They were killing my little boy. Many times as I was laying there dying, Mary and Jesus, I think, were always there. One time Jesus got into bed with me, and he put his arms around me. He said, I want you to know something, Papa. He said, you are my father. You are my father. You taught me so much on this earth. And he says, I have something for you, Papa. And he gave me this. This is not the one I made for him. He lost that years ago. This is one he made for me. He said, Papa, as you made me a gift when I came into this world, I make you a gift as you go into the next. I'm going to leave you now with two things. One, we are called to believe in God, yes? But where do we find God? In our scriptures, we hear of Elijah the prophet go to the side of the mountain to look for God. and the thunder, the lightning, yes, the quaking of the earth. But where does he find God? What? In the breeze, yes? He found God in the gentle breeze is where he found God. In his quiet, not in the shaking of the earth, but in the quiet. Every time God spoke to me, it was my quiet time. So listen for God in your world. Call out to God. Listen for God. Turn off the noise in your world and listen for God. And when you hear God and He speaks to you, you know His voice, and you say to Him, yes. And lastly, this. We have been called a holy family. Have you heard this? And what does holy mean? It means set apart. Like this altar here is holy because it is set apart for one thing, to give praise, glory, and honor to God. In my day, we have in the temple the Holy of Holies. It has the 10 Commandments, the Ark of the Covenant. It's all there in the Holy of Holies. Only one time a year does someone go in. It is set apart for God, yes? If my family is holy, it is because I set them apart. I raise up my son, I raise up my wife, I raise them up on a daily basis before God. I ask God's blessings onto them. But did you know that each one of you are called to be a holy family? And how do you do that? You wives, even though we husbands, we don't deserve it, you raise us up on a daily basis before God. You set us apart. You husbands, you raise up your wives on a daily basis before God. You children, you raise up your mother, your father before God on a daily basis. We set each other apart. That is how we all become a holy family. Yes? Shalom. Adonai Echayim.